Okay, good. So let's get our simultaneous sips in.
Still not cool.
Jesus Christ.
That was,
That was
can we actually, can we just chug a bottle? Can that be the new thing? Can we chug an entire bottle of water?
But not comment on it at all and include it in the show that gets uploaded.
Fade's coming in here.
Let's go
right.
Yeah.
So we were with Popcoder last week.
I feel really good.
Tom Brady.
Okay. We did our simultaneous sip. All right, great. My headphones.
I'll let you put the airplane.
All right. So, hi everybody. Hey, welcome to the show. This is Tom Young. Let's go around the room.
This is Bart Gallo.
This is TJ Young.
And this is Rohan Kapoor.
Hey, great. Thanks, guys. Today we're going to talk about the topic of the gig economy and compare gig work to standard jobs and break those things down and help people understand how the nature of labor and employment is going through some transformation as a result of a lot of these digital technologies. So let me just set it up a little bit and let's have a little quick dialogue. Jobs have, over the history of time, have changed tremendously. It used to be all the way back to hunter-gatherer societies. People had roles to play within a tribe. Then we moved to an agrarian society and we started to move into some larger groups, families largely, around division of labor, around making the farm more efficient. Then we moved into the industrial society, specialization increased, and in order to produce goods at an industrial scale, you needed not just a tribe or a family, you needed a large organization, and that created the notion of people having a job, and they work for a corporation, they work for the man. And they would have long careers, and the whole issue around employment, working for someone else, has been part of our culture for the last 100-plus years. And now we're going through this digital revolution where we're seeing technologies emerge around, even we're seeing the transformation of that employment. As we see things like going as far back, say, let's just go back to the late 90s, with the outsourcing revolution that started happening. Corporations were coming to the conclusion that the employees that they had were becoming too expensive. And it was hard. There wasn't a dynamic aspect to the employment. So once someone had a salary, you wouldn't lower their salary 30% for 4 months and then raise it. It wasn't like that. But the nature of the business was moving in a dynamic realm. So firms started to outsource and move their jobs offshore into low-cost labor. We started to create the notion of contractors, where we had people who would, or basically hired guns, would work for a period of time. And even Hollywood uses contract employees. Right, so they already have, their whole industry is already set up around project-based or temporary employment, and then you go back into a pool and then you're rehired for the next project or effort or movie in this case.
In that way, Hollywood kind of has been really much a gig economy for many years, and is kind of a leading example. Very different than a typical Fortune 500 corporation, but that is the model we're talking about for all white-collar jobs eventually kind of moving in that direction.
Right. This is the first time you're even hearing that term in the sort of corporate white-collar job realm. Like you said, it's been in Hollywood for some time, and usually when you hear gig, it's like a guy with a guitar. I have a gig. I have a comedy gig.
And that was a positive thing. It's like, I got a new gig. It's like, what is it?
Yeah.
And as opposed to, I don't really hear the term, like as you said before, career.
Right.
The whole idea of a career was birthed with the Industrial Revolution, where you join a company. You're not bouncing around every couple of years for a better new job or a better salary. You join a company, and hopefully you climb the ladder, and you're a company man. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I sweep the floors, and now I'm managing a team of 40.
1 year
like
of experience for 40 years.
But prior to gig, the term was project. It was mostly people doing project work. So people get hired for a project or an effort. In Hollywood, it was you hired for a movie or a production. Mm-hmm. And production companies would be created. They would hire the people. They would be W-2 employees for a contract period, and then they would sunset when that is over. And then they would go back and find the next project. Now we've moved into breaking down something that may take 3 months, 9 months, a year, into task-based gigs. So when we think of gig, you reference the music industry. Excuse me. They have someone would do play, say, a band at a bar for one night. That would be a gig. So it was one night. You get paid $500,000 for the band to show up for that night. That's your gig. And then you do a lot of gigs. That's how bands made their money. So what's happening today is we're starting to see digital start to create, through software platforms, the ability to organize work, break work down into smaller and smaller components, allowing for the creation of this gig economy.
And I think consumers have been, I think one of the first examples of kind of crowdsourcing, we're talking about crowdsourcing labor here, but crowdsourcing anything was Kickstarter for me, where you could go out to a...
Well, the term, so let's break the term down, because not everybody knows what crowdsourcing means.
Yeah.
So when we talk about gigs, I think people get a sense of what gigs are.
There's a lot of words that are overlapping, so maybe a definition.
Yeah.
So like freelancer, gig economy,
Yeah.
crowdsourcing, we kind of use them interchangeably.
Yeah.
So up on the screen we have. So last week we were at a conference hosted by Wipro with Topcoder. Topcoder is one of their subsidiaries at Wipro that does a form of crowdsourcing. So let's break down some of the terms. The gig economy is small defined containers of work, and it could be a small project. It's not time based; it's output based, right? So I'm not hiring somebody, a contractor, and it's in contrast to a contractor. I'm not hiring somebody for 3 months. I'm hiring somebody to perform a job. And so up on the screen we have 3 kinds of crowdsourcing. Now, crowdsourcing is the way that you acquire, the way you interact with this market, this gig market, to go do things. So we have microtasks, project gigs, and a competitive aspect. And we have some examples of who's out there doing this. But think of tasks where the workers conform to the available tasks. So I say, I need somebody to mow my lawn. That could be a task. So people can say, I'll do it for $40. No, I'll do it for $35. I'll do it for $30. And I pick the person that I want. Buyers conform to the available gigs. I'll design a new logo for you. Right? And you say, I'll buy that, right? I'll do the outro to your voicemail, 30-second, and make it sound really cool. I'll sound like some famous celebrity. I'll do it for $7. I'll take that.
It's a big thing for people who speak multiple languages.
Yeah.
On the side. So one of my old colleagues at a previous client, she is, I believe, Ukrainian. She can speak Ukrainian or Russian, German, English. I think Ukrainian is separate. It's kind of almost like a dialect of Russian, very similar.
Yeah, if she's from there, she probably speaks like 4 languages.
Right.
It's very common.
And I saw she has a page online. Just whenever she gets a gig, it's $25 an hour, and she'll translate between those 4 languages for a document or whatever the project is, just on the side. So you put that out there. I'm willing to do this. If you hire me, you pay me, and then it's just something. It's just it's a hustle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you think of workers conform to the work, the buyers conform to what the workers can do, and then we had an interesting thing with Topcoder where they actually take work and they put it in the form of small containers. Think of a container, logical container of a small body of work that can be defined with an input and an output, and they put it out on a platform and it's competed. So work teams, individuals will compete for that work, and the buyer gets to choose the winner, and they only pay for the winner.
It's a winner take all.
Winner take all.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea of the size and scope, Topcoder has 1.5 million players in this gamification of competing for work.
And as the name implies, it's mostly IT people, coders, largely data scientists, and people just working in data analytics more generally. So what they'll do is it's really for enterprises. What they'll do is work with an IT organization, and they'll say, hey, we need to develop like an app, for example. And these guys will say, like, all right, well, let's break this into 4, like you said, containerized projects. We're like, all right, we're going to do a competition on the UI design, so it looks cool. We're going to do a competition on the algorithms behind it, which is a different skill set to make sure it all works how you want to. Maybe some guy in the back for working the integration, and they'll say, like, all right, that's 4 projects. We're going to do 4 separate competitions, put it out there, and then see who responds. And you, as the client, say how much money you're willing to award the eventual winner as the little prize that they fight for.
So, again, Topcoder, very interesting. But let's put back up the 3 different kinds if you can in that thing. So let's just talk about who's playing in this space. So in the microtasks, the most common one that I would lay out there is workers conform to the available task would be Uber. So everybody's familiar with Uber. The drivers come in, and the task is take this customer from point A to point B. And there is a set amount of money for that. The driver is generally aware of what that's going to be. And they perform that task. They could do one ride a day. They could do 10 rides a day. It's up to them how much they want to go after. But Uber is sourcing those micro tasks at the task level versus hiring employees. Now, this is where we get into some of the issues, the political issues around how Uber should be treating their drivers. But right now, they're cogs. They are elements in their supply chain. They're not employees. They're human-based labor completing the work. But even think about with the evolution of the driverless car, as soon as Uber can acquire driverless cars at scale, they won't use drivers.
Right.
And the business case for that improves when we make it more expensive for Uber to use those drivers through some of the feel-good legislation that's coming out of places like California, where they say you got to treat these people differently. Well,
those kind of laws, we were just talking about that, how silly they were before recording. They don't understand where the job market and how technology is increasing. They don't understand where that's all going, because we're talking about examples where crowdsourcing or hiring freelancers for just gigs at a time makes sense, and it beats out hiring an employee overall. But right now, as we move into this more disruptive, volatile world in terms of what skills are important and which skills become obsolete, that churn of what's important and what's obsolete happens much more quickly. And as a business, if you're hiring an employee, you're taking on a risk. You're going to train up this person. Hopefully they're going to stay on, or maybe they're going to jump ship. And it's capital investment somewhat versus saying, I've already kind of mapped out this person's creds. He could be anywhere in the world. I want you just for this job, and it's a much less risk. Right? And they don't understand that that's where it's going. There is I wish I had actually had this clip, but Nick Bostrom, who wrote Superintelligence, just went on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about where AI is going, but he was saying, let's ground us in what happened in terms of the Industrial Revolution and how the economy's changed for humans. And he's saying we're at a time where every couple years, what's relevant and the technology that's transforming our economy is changing, and our economy is changing every couple years, even shorter than that. He said that's not been the case for many years. If you could go multiple generation after generation, and nothing would change in your life. It would be farming, and your father did something, and his father's father did something. You could live an entire lifetime without any singular scientific or technological achievement happening around the world.
Think of guilds. Guilds were generational. Apprenticeships could last 5-10 years.
Yeah.
And then you pass that on to your offspring, and they learn how to be in that guild. And now, things are so rapidly changing. I mean, this is an example even for us sitting here today. We've been doing these shows since January. We started going on publishing our shows, and we've upped our game. You can see we have, this is our first show that we're experimenting with doing a 360 video, right? That really didn't exist at the level we could do that without, hiring engineers and spending thousands and thousands of dollars. We have a 360 camera that you can go buy on Amazon for $400. And we're experimenting with this. It takes 4K video, or actually it's 5.7K because it's a surround. But right now, you can be able to look at this podcast if you have a VR headset. This show will be on VR as well. It's a little bit more work for us, but we're just experimenting around with it. But these are the rapid changes. Next year, it'll be one more set of changes. And if you're not willing to update, and this legislation is so looking behind where the
that's the point. I think Bostrom's point is good and relevant here, because that stability does not exist anymore. And in that stable world, you can create a job, a career, a guild. Now, who knows what the future lies? I don't want to hire an employee. I want to hire an infinitely scalable workforce that can come in for gigs and leave.
Yeah.
And then as the employee, they should want that too, or not as the gig worker. If in an ideal world, you want to be remote, sitting at home, have maybe 4 or 5 things going on at any given time.
Yeah.
Pick what work you want to do.
It changes also from the employer side. It changes the way that they look at project-based work completely as well because of this new paradigm. So I know Top Coder, which I've met with them a couple of times, and they've given some really interesting examples of work they've done with companies like NASA, where they need to create, let's say, a new heat-resistant new heat resistant piece of their shuttle they want to go in, and
Easy skill to find.
they go out, they go out into this pool of talent, and some of the ideas that get generated through that gamification of work kind of changes their whole view of where they thought the project was going to go entirely. So it changes the way that people look at it.
I'm going to give an example from the conference last week. They had a speaker there, a guy was affiliated with Harvard. He was one of the key speakers, one of the early writers of crowdsourcing. This is a great example to understand how gamification of this kind of work can be a real game changer. So it was a potato chip company, and they were looking to figure out how to make the potato chip less greasy. So if you touch it,
cool.
it grease everywhere. You put it down, it's just grease everywhere. So how do we make it less greasy? And the engineers and the people in the food industry, are doing all these kind of things like, let's shake, and they just kept destroying the product. The chips kept breaking every time they were doing so they put this thing out for bid, and the person who solved the problem for them was not from their industry. They weren't from food services. They weren't a mechanical engineer. The person who solved it was a violinist. And you're like, well, what does that mean? And she basically said, with the right sound frequency, I can create a sound bath for the potato chip and have the oil jump off the chip. Right? Because that's what the violin is. It's basically creating sounds through, that's where the music comes from. So she was very familiar with how sound affected the physical environment. And so she said, we can do this.
And without asking that open question, they would not have tapped into a musician prior to that.
Not a chance in hell.
Right.
No.
Or hired them full time.
It'd be like,
that one
you're not credentialed. You don't know this stuff. And it's what Topcoder says, we don't care if you went to high school or not. It's whether you can solve the problem. And, the Atlantic just had a article in June of this year around it was called The Peculiar Blindness of Experts. And it had to do with people experts in their field, whether it be weather and meteorology, whether it be physics, whether it be the economy. People with experts. Oh, I have a PhD, Nobel Prize winning economist. They're the least likely to get it right because they're so damn close.
Yeah.
It's the people who sit in adjacent fields who have a better perspective because they're not vested in something about that field. And so the Atlantic, we can put this in the show notes, Joe, if you're making a note of that. Bart, maybe pull that up on here so when we're doing the screen record.
What was it?
It's The Peculiar Blindness of Experts in the Atlantic. It's a good article to go read. You get a sense of how we're solving a problem with crowdsourcing. But I want to go back to some of the other examples so people can start to think about this and become more aware around the gigs that are happening around them that they may not really be aware of. So another one besides Uber, we know Uber. Another one around workers conforming to the task is on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
So most people have an Amazon Prime account. So Bart, go to the Amazon webpage, and I'm going to just show you this. You guys probably haven't done this. I have.
Let's see what Bart's been buying.
Yeah.
I'm not even logged in.
Good, yeah.
Smart.
So type in.
Pre-logged off just for safety.
Yeah.
We don't need to see.
It's all on my phone for extreme impulse purchases. Things like bulk Tic Tacs and
All right, so
alarm clocks.
go to Amazon Mechanical Turk.
Sure.
So this is part of your Amazon account. So if you have an Amazon account, so just get started. Just hit the Get Started button. If you're not logged in, you can't see it. This is why you kind of need to log in, but I don't want to see what things you do. So you can create tasks.
I don't even know my password. It's been on my phone for years.
You can create tasks, or you can do create a worker. I wanted to see some of this stuff.
This is like very specific task. You can't just say like give my life meaning.
No. This is workers conforming to the task. So if you're able to log in, Bart, if you don't want to, that's fine.
No, I don't know my password. It's been automatic on my phone for like 4 years.
Anyway, when you get a chance, go to Amazon Mechanical Turk. It's part of your Amazon account. And you can register. You should just try it and see what kind of tasks are out there. Now, typically when I did it, it was things like
it's another article from the Atlantic.
But what you see in Mechanical Turk is small projects around. Someone filled out a receipt for an expense report, and they wrote a note that the OCR didn't pick up, and the system kicked it out. So they need to fix it. Another example of what Mechanical Turk would do, at the very high end, they could start. They're not doing it, but I talked to them. One of the things they wanted to do was radiology. They could kick out X-rays and have a certified doctor. You have to go through some certifications for some of the work. You could then clear that, and then your Amazon account would be credited for the work you do. So everything from things that are 5 cents, 1 cent, to $25, $100 can be on this account. We worked with IPsoft. IPsoft was training their cognitive agent to understand natural language. And what they did was they said, give me 10 ways, and I'll pay you 50 cents. Just fill it out. 10 ways to say yes to, are you going to a party? And they had 1,000 people answer the question. And now what happened was, here's ways you can say yes, I'm going to a party. I'll be late.
That's a yes.
That's a yes.
Yeah.
I'm bringing a friend.
Yes.
That's a yes. What time does it start? Maybe. So you go through this whole
Do
thing.
you need me to bring anything?
But we know that, based on our language and our experience, but in order to train the AI, you've got to go. So they had these thousands and thousands of data points from people who filled this out, and they loaded it up into a database, and it was very clustered around yes, I'll be there, all these kind of things, all the way down to a long tail, and let the machines look at all that information.
What's good about that is they were building an AI, kind of a cognitive virtual assistant, similar to like a Siri, but for enterprises. It has to be something that is relevant globally. They have global customers, and if you're just relying on the back room of really smart neuroscientists and AI people and their experience of what should be training that AI, that's going to be very biased. That's a lot of the criticisms in the media recently around how are we training all the algorithms running Facebook or these other social media platforms, because it's really trained from the purview of all of the rich, young Silicon Valley people sitting in near San Francisco. And Silicon Valley, does that really represent the values and kind of the experience of the global population? So
data bias is a huge issue.
But if you use crowdsourcing, then you're getting input on how to say yes to go to a party from different languages, different cultures, different people, walks of life, rather than just your limited worldview.
Yeah. So the coolest thing, when I talked to the Mechanical Turk guys at Amazon, the coolest thing that they were doing was doing some work for NSA. And the NSA language engines that were monitoring social media chatter in multiple languages in different hotspots in the world, there would be a portion of the chatter that the machines didn't understand. It could be 3%, could be 6%. This could be a portion where someone's using a colloquialism, or like we would know LOL is laugh out loud in text, but there's other ones that I don't know what they are. I got one this morning. I had to look it up. And so the machines sometimes get stumped, and what they do is anything that kicks out, they throw it right to the Mechanical Turk, and they have people who are multi-language speakers, and they clear it out for a few cents, 5 cents, 10 cents, whatever the fee is.
Yeah.
And it comes back at near machine speed. And now and sometimes that last bit is important to them. And so, but you could not hire a person to do it. Just like you couldn't hire us. Imagine hiring Bart and TJ to go figure out, give me 1,000 ways to say yes. Well, you guys would come up with probably a lot of creative ones, but you would miss a lot compared to the crowd.
Yeah.
And the cost of hiring you two for just one day
Well, that's a good point.
exceeds the cost of going to the crowd and getting 1,000 responses.
We could have a whole podcast on this, but the efficient utilization of experts.
Yeah.
Right. So we talk about, this is going to get maybe too deep of an IT example, but like IT tech support, like a service desk.
Right.
These companies have to hire, unless they're outsourcing, L2, L3 personnel, experts in their field for issues that that first guy who answers the phone can't fix. Right. But big problems in a company that are bit complicated, maybe novel. You don't want that L3 expert savant person who's been an IT architect for years is sitting there collecting his salary and kind of just moseying his way around a corporation, jumping through the bureaucratic loops until an issue that warrants his attention comes up. You want to hire that resource only when those issues come up, right? So it's good for both parties. If you're a company, you don't want to hire a high salary, expensive person just to sit there for when those problems arise. And you can't not have them, because if there's a huge
when you need them,
priority
you
one
need
event, and maybe your ERP system goes down and you can't ship any products. You've got to have those experts there, but it's expensive to have them on the payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're on the receiving end, if you're the expert, you don't want to be sitting around not utilizing your knowledge or your capability only 10% of the time. You want to be able to say, I have my crowdsourcing platform here, a new problem came up, I can go and give my input on this radiology exam, or I can go and give my input on this algorithm. And it's a constant stream of those high-level problems coming your way, and you can efficiently use your experience and your talent as opposed to just 5% of the time.
Right.
So what do you think are some of the mental blocks or challenges that, like within the enterprise, some companies are facing when you're talking about opening up their labor to this completely new type of model?
Well, I mean, part of it also just has to do with just exposing the people. I mean, we've already lived with this a little bit. So when we talk about the use of experts, so for example, a lot of people will use outside counsel for legal work. They won't hire a doctor. They'll go to the doctor's office and pay per gig, right? In the medical industry, in the legal industry, even accounting, those industries have already been set up in a form of a gig, but it's through like professional services organizations. What's happening today is other forms of expertise are emerging in similar models to that, and they're not going through what I'll call the traditional way of setting up a professional practice through like a guild. Like medical is a guild, legal is a guild, and so is accounting. Mm-hmm. And there's barriers to be in these guilds. They won't let you do it. Mm-hmm. I can't go set up a shop and perform medicine. I got to go to medical school for 8 years and get licensed, and these guilds protect their markets. These other expertises now are popping up, and they're leveraging digital technologies without the barriers of a guild and creating a whole bunch of things that's happening and breaking down even those classic guilds.
Yeah.
We're going to start to see medical show up in crowdsourcing. We're going to see accounting, and we're going to start to see legal show up in crowdsourcing. So, but I want to go through the rest of these so people can get a sense of this, so they can be attuned as they're looking around the services, even the work that they do, how some of this might be changing right in front of their nose without them even knowing it. Mm-hmm. So let's talk to the next group, which is a project gig side, which is the buyers now conform to the available gigs. So let's look at the most common one that we use is Fiverr. So a lot of the work that we do in our firm, especially even around this podcast, around some of our marketing stuff, is Fiverr. Fiverr is I guess the term freelance but people will come in. It originated with people who would do things for $5.
You know the store Five Below?
Yeah,
This is that for freelancers online.
Right.
Except they didn't really, just like Five Below, they didn't really adhere to the name. And there's some gigs you can hire people for $50 or $100.
$1,000 in some cases for.
Right.
Professional video.
But most of them are $5, and it's very simple. Like, I'll read your paragraph with radio quality voice, and I'll send it your way.
Mm-hmm. They started off at $5 each, and they kind of got away from that. Right. If you look at the price points here, most of them are sub $100. But go to the graphics and design.
Just to get a sense, there are some people charging upwards of $500.
So what is this one? $425. Our studio will provide voiceover, original music, and mix for your video.
Yeah, so it's just quality and experience here driving it.
Yeah.
But that's good, though. You don't want just the low tier $5. You want to have a range.
Go back down, Bart. I want to see that. It's 60 seconds. 60 seconds for $1,300, and for basic, it's $425 for 30 seconds. So again, if you need some original music, now if you're in a corporate environment and you want to go do this internally, it's going to cost you multiples of this to go do that. So let's go to the graphic and design piece, because that's where you see the cheap stuff. Mm-hmm. So just do logo design. Yeah. And you can start to see here it's $5. I'll design a mascot character logo for your team. So you have an esports team, or you have a football pool you're doing. For $5, you can create a logo for your fantasy football league.
Yeah, we designed a logo for one of our clients, and I think for in total about $120, we got about 25 designs.
And quick. It comes quick
Yeah.
as well.
Rapidly.
So
Yeah.
we have the book coming out on digital labor next week. I think next Friday.
Well, you take a lot of the credit. You have a book coming out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like to say we because it was a lot of effort. But I'm just saying
It's
we
so
have a book.
humble.
We have a book coming out, and there are a lot of graphics in the book. I want to say 50. We paid some guy in Indonesia to hand draw all these graphs, so we didn't have to pay royalties to other people. $5 each.
And we voice recorded some information for the person that helped edit and write. And
So-
we've got transcription services through Fiverr.
And even the intro to this
Pardon
podcast.
disruption.
Welcome to the podcast.
And the logo.
I think that's Jody, right?
I might just, can I outsource my placement here on the podcast? Like, I hired a guy to be a better voice than me. I just manage him.
But anyway, these things are out there. You should, if you're not familiar with Fiverr, I would encourage you to go out there and play around with it, spend a little bit of money, and learn how this stuff works. And what's interesting, so let's just pick one, Bart. Let's go to graphics design. Let's do the
Sure.
logo because we're into football season. People may want to do a logo for their football team.
Design two creative minimalist logos.
Or even back to
All right, so
parties.
this is so where is this person located? Let's just go down. This is $10, and they'll do a minimalist design. And can you see where this guy is?
India.
India. So this guy's in India. Now, $10 in India, he goes all the way out to premium logo designs and all the way up to $100. This guy, if he gets enough work, he can make a living. Now let's just go to his social profile here and see how much work he has. So
Wow.
He has
1,000 plus reviews.
Yeah.
right, so he's a top seller and he's being promoted there. So he probably has. Does it say how many reviews he has?
Yeah, 1,000
This is
plus.
1,000 plus reviews.
Even at the low end of that, that's still,
So he could be making a good living
yeah.
in
Oh, yeah.
India, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
And he can probably crank these. He probably has a huge pipeline being a top seller.
3 days delivery.
Crank these out.
Yeah.
yeah,
He wakes up, goes on the computer, designs for 8-10 hours.
Yeah.
Imagine what he's making.
Can reuse certain designs just to hash things
But-
out.
but
Someone's
it-
working towards what they're looking for.
even think of the cultural impact, right? A lot of people have immigrated from India to go into Western markets, either Europe or the U.S., to make money to send home and support their family, right? Now they can stay home and do some of this work and really compete for it. It becomes a global market. It's borderless when you start doing this.
You don't have a boss. You're working for everybody and you're working
Yeah.
for nobody.
Yeah. Well, and you're accountable for your time to yourself.
That's the hard part. If you're not motivated,
Yeah. So
then he can get away from you.
So anyway, so go check these things out. There's some neat things. You can turn this into. You take the logo, then you go to a T-shirt company. You can make custom T-shirts. You can do a lot of cool things you didn't do before. Think about even as a birthday gift, a creative gift is to give a logo to a friend of their milestone birthday and
Yeah.
give them a logo and give them a shirt that's made for that. They're like, wow, you made a custom. Yeah. It's a very creative kind of gift that's inexpensive but very thoughtful. Just really interesting stuff you can go do there.
It's very cheap too. I do it's called the Polar Plunge every year. It's a kind of a charity event. You jump into ice cold water on the Jersey Shore. Well, they do it all over the place, but my buddy has a friend who is like an amateur designer, and he would design our custom shirts every year. We'd wear like matching shirts with like an angry polar bear either drinking beer or just going to the ocean. Just something crazy. But he's a kind of an amateur designer. So this past year, I sent out. I bought like maybe $5-10 gigs, spent $50 on it,
Yeah.
and I got back like just mind blowing design, just really professional stuff. And I sent it to our group chat, and they're like, "Where did you get this?" They were just blown away. So, magician doesn't show his tricks, so I just like, I don't know, I know a guy.
Yeah. Crowdsourcing.
Yeah,
Nothing else.
Yeah.
it's awesome.
But
Yeah.
even think about now, if I'm an employee at a company, I can now start to invest in my job a little bit. I can go buy some of these services and incorporate it as my own, and then improve my work product at the office tremendously and distinguish myself. So if I do this throughout the course of the year, let's just throw out a number. I take $1,000 worth of gig work like this, go to a Fiverr, or there's another one, Upwork, there's a few others, and I enhance my work. I may get an extra $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 bonus because I distinguish myself as the person who can do wild stuff.
Yeah.
Everything from voiceovers to creative design. You know, as companies are looking for, you know, more design thinking, if you don't have those skills, but you know how to get them, it's the same thing as having them, right? Because people don't care whether you have them or not. They care if they ask you about it and it's delivered to their door the next day. And we've used these. So we use an example. I'm going to use Upwork as another one. It's more a sort of classical work. We were working at a client, and this woman had a need for to write some crazy calendar macro in Word so she could do certain things like that, and she was asking me about it. And I said, well, just tell me what you need, and we'll do it. And she goes, you don't even know what it is. I said, by the way, I told her, I'm not doing anything. I'm just taking it from you, and then I walk away, it happens, and I give it back to you. So as far as you're concerned, I'm doing it, but I'm just telling you for clarity, we're not doing it. So she gave it to me. I walked over to TJ, and I said, TJ, you take it. And he goes, I don't have to do that. I said, you figure it out. He went to Upwork, what was it, $25?
Something like that.
$25, the guy wrote a visual basic macro that was added into Word, and it was a program you could run. I got it back in like 2 days. I went back, and we ran it, and she's like, wow. And it was just like,
it's amazing. Yeah.
And so, but that creates in our world, you know, consulting, we want to create value added while we're on a client site. We want to do extra things that aren't part of our statement of work so that they think, hey, this is really valuable, because you do enough of them, then they hire you for that the next time. That's how we got into a lot of the video production work. So even some of the video work we did, we gigged out a lot of stuff, including some of the sound engineering in the early stages when we were trying to close things. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do, but it's really worthy of looking at this from two dimensions. One is, how can you buy from this world of gig? Through Amazon Mechanical Turk, through Upwork, through Fiverr, and even Topcoder in the professional world, and other ones like it. There's many, many platforms showing up. So how can you buy it to be a more effective worker in your whatever environment you're in? The second one is, do you have any skills that you can sell back to the market for side income? Right, so if you have a nice FM voice, or you're a voice actor, or you're doing voice work, and you have the equipment at home, and you create this platform, you come home and you have an email with 10 gigs for $100, and you have to spend an hour. You have to say, do I want to spend an hour after dinner?
You're not wasting time finding clients. You're putting that burden of the clients to find you.
Yeah.
So I do that, and I get an extra $500 a month. You know, and I'm doing something that I like to do on the side. I'm engaging with people. There's a social side. It's fun. If I can make that happen, then yeah, why not? So there's a positive aspect to this, and it's disrupting the world. Now, you know, we're starting to see some, you know, crazy reactions to this, but I would tell you that, you know, the legislation's never going to keep up with the ability to sidestep it.
Yeah, I think the other really cool aspect as well, just as we close it out, is it also gives the person buying the work the way these platforms set up, a really good idea on how capable the person they're buying the work is on doing this particular project. So if you have a salaried employee working on a project, maybe they worked on 10 projects, but how do you know that how they performed in that particular task? It's very difficult to tell with the salaried employees. You have feedback sessions and reviews and all that kind of stuff. But on these platforms, there's public reviews, there's ratings. So when you're buying, you see how many jobs they've done, and some platforms show how much money they've actually earned from the jobs. So you have a much more fun, grounded idea on, like, this person I'm hiring is proven, which is another thing that lacks maybe with some of the salary jobs and employees that they have now.
I would much prefer seeing 1,000 reviews with a star rating, just like Amazon, than your resume and 2 references you give me. who are your
Yeah.
friend and are paid to say good things
Yeah.
before I hire you.
Yeah.
I had to write some blog stuff, and it was one of those things that if you have to ever do that,
Yeah.
it's hard to sometimes get started. And I used the Fiverr platform, and it was $5 to write a 500-word essay. It was like a teaser thing. They wanted you to get it. So I bought a few of them, and I said, I want you to write an essay on the following things. And I wrote like a sentence, and they came back with, it might have been 500 words, maybe 250 words, but it was enough to get the ball started, because I would read it like, this isn't what I wanted, and then I would fix it, and for me it was, a few dollars to get the ball rolling, but I could also see the potential of this, where you could, outsource some of your work, right? Imagine, if I'm an employee and I have to grind out some standard report once a month. I have to take this, that, and the other thing, combine it, and it's a routine report. And the report looks a lot like prior reports. And I'm paid to do that. And maybe, let's just make up my salary. My salary is, I'm a $100,000 office worker. And this takes 3 hours of my month. So we can do the whole math about what the hourly rate of implied is that. Now, as that $100,000 person, this is drudgery for me. It's a part of my job that I hate. If I took the time, I could structure this thing, do it up on Upwork, and pay somebody, let's just make up a number, $20 a month to do this. Now I have those 3 hours, and I don't have to do it.
Or pay a guy to write a script to automate it for good.
Right.
There you go, and then it's all done. So you can start to see, if you can become the customer of your work and do this for yourself, you can start to free up your time. And our premise on our other podcast is about time. Experience this, is that you will realize you're going to run out of time before you run out of money. I would encourage people to start valuing their time differently and making sure that the work that they're doing is the best use of that time. We had a guy, prior to this whole trend of gig and stuff like that, we were working in a big company out in Chicago, and turned out he had taken his entire job and contacted some guy in India to do it for him. So he was making $120,000 a year, and he paid the guy in India $35,000, and the guy did all of this work. And this was going on for months, right? And eventually there was a security audit, and an IP address popped up that was bad, and he got caught. But he was clearing the difference between the 30 and what he was able to do. He could do whatever he wanted. In this case, he took another job, and
That's crazy.
so he had outsourced his job and was making that money. Then the company could have outsourced the job and done the same thing, but
What happened to the guy?
he got fired. We were arguing.
He's now the CEO. Yeah.
We were arguing he should have been.
That's an innovator right there.
Yeah.
He should have been promoted.
Yeah.
But he ended up getting fired, and it was a funny story about just the notion of becoming a customer. If you can do it, you can make a lot more money.
Yeah.
This guy made a lot more money as a result of that experience. He made money while he was doing it, and after he got fired, he made more money.
Yeah.
The reason is because now he knows the power of becoming the customer of your work.
Yeah.
So think about in the smallest possible way. If you're a knowledge worker in an office today, I would say go check out these platforms. There is some mundane task that you have that can either be gigged out, and you can say, I'll trade the 2 or 3 hours that I don't want to do this for a few bucks so I can relax and do something else that I want to do. Or you can automate it. There's a whole bunch of things you can do, but solve it a different way. And the act of doing that makes you more valuable to the ecosystem, not less valuable. It's counterintuitive. So you will, anyway, I just encourage people to go do that. And then the last one, we'll just talk a little bit about Topcoder. We've seen some pretty cool examples. An example around the potato chip is now you can get access to experts in adjacent fields to solve gnarly problems. So there was another example that Topcoder used. I think I'm going to get this wrong, but the concept's roughly right. It was a DEA project, and they had a lot of surface radar information coming in, but they only had so many. The Coast Guard and DEA only had so much capacity for interdiction, so they could only check certain boats coming into the U.S. waters from outside international waters. So they said, let's solve this problem to come up with a better algorithm or a better protocol for which ships to go after based on all the telemetry that they had. And it was a data science problem. And, the people who were in the DEA says, no, the rule of thumb is you got to do this. And it's all these experts.
All the guild people.
All the guild people, had a certain level of effectiveness. And they thought they were doing a good job. And they probably were, given the way they were solving the problem. They put this out on Topcoder, and a biologist came up with a much better protocol. Because he didn't think of it as drugs and boats. He just looked at it as a data problem, and the data problem looked a lot like a biology thing he'd seen, and he said, this is how I would do it. And that was a much more effective way, and they jumped up their effectiveness in terms of interdictions tremendously by looking at behavioral patterns. So, again, you have to expose yourself on what is possible today in order to be more effective buyer of these services, and then also think about how you can contribute to these platforms so that you can make more money on the side. And maybe that could become a career. Some of the people at Topcoder, not 1.5 million, most of them are part-timers. The very top of the curve is making bank. And
do you guys have a side hustle at night? I do not, but I want to find one.
Mine's music. I'm starting to get really into my DJing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But
let me know when you're playing the club.
Oh, for sure.
As long as I can go backstage.
I'm a male gigolo, but since we shut down Backpage, I lost all my business. No pipeline.
It's dried up.
Anti-freedom there.
No, but it's you should do it. I did a few things on Mechanical Turk just to experience it, but I think it's you have to think about something, and I would do it just for the experience of doing it.
Some of it can be drudgery. Like I think the worst case of this is what Facebook does for content moderation. You think that they, they have a lot of money. They have huge and robust AI algorithm, but the AI is still very primitive in many of these cases. So for content moderation, you think that it's automatically flagging the stuff. They have an army of gigged out freelancers looking at horrible images that are uploaded to the platform to say, like, is this illegal or is this okay? And there's people every 3 seconds. I think was the SLA. I think NPR did a podcast on it. And they were tested 3 seconds. Click yes, no, click yes, no, click.
Where they
all day.
A penny an image.
It's something like that. So they're expected to crank it out, but that all day you're looking at whatever BS people are uploading around the globe.
I think it's huge PTSD implications in some cases.
So some of it's drudgery, but it's worth looking into.
So try it.
Dip your toes.
Be a better buyer. Be a better contributor. This is an emerging trend. More is coming. There's going to be political, economic ramifications. But I think if you look at this on a positive way as an individual, this will free you up from, at some level, the shackles of employment and allow you to spend more time doing the things you want to do and allow people to really change the algebra of how they view their time.
Yeah, work when you want to work.
Yeah.
Work when, where, and how. And to be able to do things. So, like, you can't say, well, I'm going to go to Paris when I have my next vacation. No, go when you're ready to go.
And I'll just do a gig from there.
Do a gig from there. Who even knows? So, anyway, there's a lot of interesting stuff here. Go check it out. This is a cool topic, and we'll be doing some more stuff. So we'll do a follow-up podcast on this topic in a little while after we both test our doing. One of the things I'm thinking about doing is Uber. Be a driver.
Kieran was thinking.
Well, I got a new car, so why not?
Yeah.
All you got to do is just get registered and show you have the right insurance and all that. And
just don't do the midnight shift. I think it gets a little. Probably not in these parts, but.
Yeah. Well,
all kinds of crazy
drunk people.
So a lot of the Uber stuff, they're getting around. Some of the people are making less than minimum wage. I guess that's probably true in some cases, but I think I was in a place. I was down in Wildwood, New Jersey, with my daughters maybe a year or two ago, and we were walking around a lot. The boardwalk and everything. And our hotel was about a mile from the amusement area that they wanted to go to. And we had walked by then already 6-7 miles, and I just didn't want to do it again. So I was just seeing if Uber was available, and I did it, and there was one like 2 minutes away. So I said, let's take Uber. It was like $7 and saved it. So I'm like, yeah, let's do that. So the guy picks us up, and it's about a 5-minute ride, $7. And he had a nice car. And I said, hey, so what are you doing? I didn't expect Uber here. I was just flagging up to see if I could get it. Oh, yeah. He goes, I'm going out with my buddies. And, in a couple hours, I was ready early, so I just got in the car and started driving, make a few bucks so I don't have to pay the bar bill tonight. And so it wasn't he was a driver. He had a regular job. It was on a weekend. He was going to meet his friends at like 8 o'clock to go to some local pub and have drinks. And it was like 5:30. He picked me up because he was ready to go out. He was ready. And he said, I'll drive for 2 hours and drive around town and pick up, $40, $50, and that covers my night. And interesting way of thinking about how otherwise he was going to sit there and do what?
Right.
Page through Instagram, watch a Netflix, do something. And now he's doing this. Now you can say, I don't want to drive for somebody. Well, then don't do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, there's other things you can be doing to take advantage of your idle time, your capacity, and then also be smart about how not wasting your time and buying from somebody else who wants to do it. So, good stuff.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Yeah.
It was like 40.